Okay, welcome to another installment, our first installment of Unit 7. And so today we're taking a look at art in the Baroque world. So we are moving from the Renaissance and now getting into what happens in the 1600s into the 1700s. A lot of the changes happen either as a consequence of what happened in the Renaissance, Reformation, Counter-Reformation, or as sort of a continuation. So either we'll see people continue with the ideals or reject and change some of the ideals that we saw earlier in Unit 5 and 6. And so first off, let's just define what the word Baroque means. That's a term usually applied to anything that is elaborate, fanciful, decorative, emotional, and I think having a look at some examples should help you with that. This is the style, like I said, of 17th and early 18th century, right after the Renaissance. Some things that make this a big change, this period marks a new period, is first of all, the Reformation took power out of Italy and dispersed it to other countries, like you saw Luther argue with the German people at least, and others followed. The Reformation sought to get the claws of the Catholic Church out of other countries, especially Northern European countries. Big changes happened as a result of that. Economic growth, power, especially in France, the rise of the middle class, even exploration of the Americas, new developments in philosophy and scientific thought, like we saw started with Bacon and will continue in this unit, and more exploration of faith and theology, either some holding to the developments that the Catholic Church made or some fighting even harder against it. In terms of art, lots of new forms: opera, instrumental music, portraits, landscapes, everyday life, private homes, even art as civic planning. So we'll get to see a lot of new developments, and we'll get to see some developments in terms of how emotions and psychology are portrayed in paintings as well, paintings and artwork and music. So just to contrast, the Renaissance, again, was all about balance, control, order, using principles of math and logic, and using reality, but distorting that to a two-dimensional surface or stone, like trying to transform something into looking realistic. Now, once that's been achieved, the next step that artists take in the Baroque era is capturing emotion. Now that we know how to make things look realistic, next step, make them look emotional. And what you saw with Michelangelo's David really captures the idea of emotion. And I think a lot of Baroque artists look to Michelangelo's infusion of emotion as sort of inspiration. Now, why use all this emotion? Well, of course, it engages us. When we see intensity, it pulls us in. As a way to do this, to heighten emotion, a lot of artists use almost theatrical tools to make things look even more dramatic. We'll see this tool called tenebrism, where it's almost like there's a spotlight on a figure, and that figure is surrounded in darkness. We'll see a lot of that. That's super popular at this time. Chiaroscuro develops more. We'll see artists picking the most intense moment in a story or scene. So lots of interesting new approaches that kind of come out of or come as a reaction to the Renaissance. Now in Italy, not surprisingly, like you saw with the Council of Trent, the church is sticking to their plan for the most part. Art becomes even more important as basically propaganda to keep prominence focused on the church, to give them an important place in the world. And also, as before, art is didactic, it is for teaching, It is for decoration still. It it shows the religious stories that you see in the Bible, and so it's still that kind of Bible of the poor idea. Let's see some examples. So first in Italy, two big movements in Italy. Well, we'll break it into two. One is led by the artist Caravaggio. He takes this idea of tenebrism to the extreme. You see the highlight of Paul here down below, who has fallen off of his horse, gotten knocked down by the light of God, um, and is being, at this moment, peak of intensity, uh, being spoken to by God and experiencing the start of his conversion from Judaism to Christianity. The Apostle Paul in the New Testament, of course, was a persecutor of Jews and killed Jews. What am I saying? Killed Jews, killed Christians. Sorry about that. He was a Jew. He killed Christians. Not to be laughing. Just got a mix up there. And at this moment, on his way to Damascus to persecute more Christians, he's knocked off of his horse and hears God talking to him, Jesus asking, "Why are you persecuting me, Paul?" And this is a transformation for Paul and an important story in the New Testament as well. And so Caravaggio takes that important story and captures it with emotion and especially use of light and dark. Now, you can imagine, like it says here, classical artists, people who love the Renaissance style of order, organization, they don't like this. In fact, they call Caravaggio the Antichrist of painting. They don't see this as respectful. They don't see it as devotional. They don't see it as uh, bowing down to the classical tradition that we saw in the Renaissance. But the people like him. He gets a lot of commissions, and so it seems like his controversy worked for him. He inspires a bunch of other painters, including this one. Gentileschi was a female painter, Caravagista, who followed in Caravaggio's style. She took also a biblical story. This one is Old Testament, the story of Judith, who is a figure in the Old Testament who delivers her people from an attacking Assyrian army. And here you can see this guy, Holofernes, was about to come into her tent and rape her. And she, I guess she invites him in to do that, up to her trickery, and she beheads him in her tent. And so this is a super powerful story. You can see way different from the Renaissance. This is graphic, this is intense. The light is like, it looks real. It looks like this is candlelight in a tent, romantic setting. Not so much. But it definitely breaks with the style of the Renaissance. And so this one, we would totally call it Baroque. Now, something totally different, still biblical story, New Testament. Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus on their way to Egypt after they've been threatened. And so they're moving on out of Bethlehem to Egypt. What is so different about this? Well, the light, the setting, the figures. How would Renaissance painters feel about this? Well, probably a lot better than the Caravagista. Uh, this looks natural. This looks beautiful. Oof, need coffee. This looks respectful. Um, this is a lovely natural setting, nothing controversial, prominence to the Holy Family up front, although the landscape, the beautiful landscape, which by the way looks a lot like Rome, not the Middle East. This building over here does not look very Middle Eastern to me, a lot of green here as well, but we've seen that before. Karachi takes a new style, which is more typical classical Renaissance look, still with a biblical narrative. Now, for our probably most significant artist of the Baroque era, this is Bernini, still Italian. Bernini worked more with sculpture and architecture. we'll get to architecture in a minute, but he's an important Counter-Reformation artist. So here you can see we have David again, our homeboy. We saw him go from Donatello at the beginning of the Renaissance. Simple, not too much muscle development, great detail we talked about in the head of Goliath, but early Renaissance. Then the masterpiece, Michelangelo. You can hear my bias creeping through. Michelangelo's David, intense in the eye. Remember the Terribilita in the hands, the veins popping. Classic Renaissance. And then Baroque, check this bad boy out. Look at the face. Look at the face of David. That's intensity. Look at that like frowny scowl and the squinched up eyes. And this is intensity. Whereas here we see kind of David lounging, killing's already happened, everything is cool. But here we can see kind of back to what we saw with Discobolos in ancient Greece. Moment of intensity. Great contrapposto, like that idea of balance and weight shift, matching the violent emotion and even revealing his thoughts and feelings, like his aggression inside. So love it. This is a great example of how artists in the Baroque period move, but also really respect the past as well. I would say classical, Renaissance, and Greek sculptors would probably be okay with this sculpture of David. Michelangelo might say, buff up that body a little bit, especially in the chest up here, but otherwise he'd be pretty happy. Now this one's Bernini's probably most famous piece. Like I said, architecture, art used as propaganda a little bit. So here you see Bernini, same artist, creating the new St. Peter's. So this is in Vatican City, Rome. This is the home of the Catholic Church. This is where St. Peter was crucified back in the days of the early church. So this is holy ground. That's why, or it's considered holy ground. That's why it's called St. Peter's. And the church still resides here today. This is the seat of the church. And if you look at the structure, people like to say that the new structure of St. Peter's was like open arms, welcoming the people in. And so here you can see this is the entryway. Here's the road leading up to it. And this back here is the actual church. You can see it flipped right here. But you can see people like to argue this is the church opening its arms and welcoming people in. And if you do go hang out here, you can hang out. This is a place to be and be at peace, have a little fun, have a little pizza. Just a side note, when I was a youngster, I got married to my high school sweetheart. We got divorced 6 months later, but we stayed in a little hotel over here, and we got married in Rome, and we always would eat pizza for supper in St. Peter's. So pretty cool. It was fun. But I can tell you more about that someday. But it is a very cool place welcoming people into the church. Okay, that's it for Italy. I'm gonna stop the video and make a new one for France and what comes next. Thanks for watching.